Hi, I'm Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm excited to be here with the 2019 Homage. It is a full suspension step-through e-bike made in Germany by Riesenmüller. It is one of my favorite e-bikes. In fact, my wife has one and I love riding it. It takes advantage of R&M's control technology, which ensures a safe and comfortable ride. Not only is it super comfortable, it's very safe and essentially maintenance-free. You'll love riding it all day, anywhere you want to go. For the detailed specs and current pricing, order online, you can visit our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact information to ask questions or set up an appointment to come try it here in beautiful Ladysmith on Vancouver Island. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of what this bike is about. Then I'll take you through all the detailed specs, and of course I'll take you on an extensive ride test. I'm passionate about e-bikes, so I want to help you find the perfect e-bike for your needs. So this video is detailed, which means it's long. So feel free to skip around, and you can always skip to the ride test if you wish after this quick overview that I'm going to give you. So to start with, I'm going to go through a quick summary of my favorite features of the Homage, and then I'll get into the details. As you can see, the Homage is a step-through, which means you can easily get on and off without lifting your leg over the back rack or trying to lean the bike so that you can lift your leg really high over the crossbar. If you commute and you start and stop a lot, this is ideal. Or if you load up the pannier bags on the rack, you don't have to worry about getting your leg over that rack when it's full. Now, maybe you haven't considered a step-through, or you've maybe had a bad experience or heard about problems with step-through frame designs being difficult to control or not as stiff as a regular frame bike. Now, fortunately, the German engineering that R&M is well known for means that this actually performs as well as any diamond frame bike, while giving you all the advantages of a step-through without any disadvantages. In fact, even though I have a D-Lite GX Rohloff myself, I often ride my wife's Homage. Sometimes in the evening I'm tired, I just want a really easy bike to ride. And the Homage is so easy to get on and off. It's also really comfortable. You've got a really nice upright riding position here, and that really helps for my lower back. So the Homage features what Riesenmüller calls their control technology. As I've mentioned, this is an incredibly comfortable bike, both for short and long rides. But R&M's control technology is a lot more than that. It makes this a very safe bike to ride for you, or maybe you put a child in the child seat. And I'll talk more about that later, but you can see we've got the Suntour Ion e-bike specific front shock, front fork up here, and we have a shock on the back here as well. You can kind of see it in there, and a independent rear swing arm, and that helps to ensure that both of your wheels are always on the ground. You're always in complete control of the bike. So it's a comfort thing, yes, but also a control and stability thing, and I will talk about that later in the video. I mentioned we've got this really upright riding position. Very, very comfortable. We've got these ergonomic grips here as well to make that a very comfortable ride. I love having the option of dual batteries. So we actually have the Bosch power tube battery integrated into the frame here. It is removable. I can actually get in there and remove that if I wanted to, or I can charge it on the bike. And we have an optional second Bosch power pack battery externally mounted here. So if you're like me and like to go exploring and sometimes do longer rides, or maybe you just ride to work all week and you don't want to have to worry about charging up your batteries, or maybe you're like my wife and have a little bit of range anxiety and you're worried about running out of battery and pedaling a heavy bike home. If that's the case, then the dual battery option is definitely worth considering, since you'll be able to ride all day without charging. There's lots of other great features about this bike that I'll talk about in the in-depth portion of the review that's coming up next. But a few other highlights before I get into that include the Supernova M99 Mini. This is an incredibly bright light, 1250 lumens, even has a high beam and low beam button right up here to keep you visible. Now, safety is a big deal to Riesenmüller. That's why they use their control technology to keep you safe. And they've also got this incredibly bright rear tail light that can be seen almost a kilometer away. Now, the really cool thing about this is when I squeeze either of the brake levers, you can see that it brightens up making you incredibly visible, and that's really important for keeping you safe. Now, to keep the bike safe, the bike actually comes with this ABUS folding alarm lock. So it has a motion detector alarm that's going to make a 100 decibel alarm if the lock gets tampered with. Folds up nice and small and mounts on here, but these are actually steel bars coated in rubber that you can use to lock up and protect your bike. So it's a nice feature. The key that you use to unlock the alarm is the same key you use for the battery, so very handy that way. Another great reason that this is such an awesome e-bike is the Bosch CX drive, which is Bosch's top-end drive unit. Gives you lots of torque, very reliable and very responsive. So there's lots to love about the Homage. It's definitely one of my favorite bikes. It's incredibly capable. In fact, in the ride test, I'm going to take you mountain biking just to show you what you can do with it. And so it's very comfortable and obviously designed to last a really long time. Riesenmüller custom builds their bikes in Germany, so you can read about the specs on our website, but if you get the chance to come and try it, that's when you'll really experience what the attention to detail, the excellence in engineering, and the focus on quality really means. So they only build e-bikes, and I love that approach because the design of the bike and every component was carefully selected to come together to provide the best possible experience. The Homage is available in 3 sizes, but only 1 color. You can choose the drivetrain and the tires, and I do have these options in the detailed specs on our website at citruscycles.ca. But if you find yourself a bit overwhelmed and need help making the right choice, that's what we're here for, so feel free to call or email and I'm happy to help. Just a quick summary of the differences. The Homage GT Touring, which I don't have here, has a traditional chain, 11-speed cassette, and Schwalbe Supermoto X 2.4-inch wide tires, which is what these tires are here. The Homage GH Vario, which is this one here, uses the Enviolo Nuvinci N380 continuously variable transmission and a Gates carbon belt. It also has those Supermoto X 2.4-inch wide tires. The Homage GX Rohloff, which is the next one here, comes with the Rohloff speed hub with the electronic shifting. That's a 14-speed internally geared hub. Very, very wide gear ratio. You can climb super, super steep hills and go really fast. And it also then moves you up to the Rock Razor tires from Schwalbe for more traction in off-road situations. Now, of course, the rims are the same between all the bikes, so it would be easy enough to change the tires. But you can't change from a Rohloff to a Nuvinci hub or back and forth. Now, with both the Enviolo Nuvinci CVT, which is this one here, and which is, by the way, again on the Homage Vario, GT Vario, and the Rohloff electronic hub here, means that you can get the Gates carbon belt. And I love having the Gates carbon belt because I love riding bikes, but I don't like having to clean them. I've got too many bikes that I have to clean the drivetrain. So with the Gates carbon belt here, you can go for a ride in the pouring rain or muddy, bad conditions, and when you get back, you don't have to clean or oil your drivetrain. The belt requires no maintenance, which is great, and the belt lasts significantly longer than a chain, which is nice as well. Now, with either of these transmissions, the Enviolo Nuvinci M380 or the Rohloff E14 back there, you can actually shift while you're stopped, which is awesome. In fact, the Rohloff even automatically downshifts, if you wish, to whatever preset gear you want. So I don't have to think about it. I can shift while I'm coasting or while I'm pedaling, so it's very easy to use. Now that I've given you an overview of the bike, I'll dive into the detailed specs and the benefits. If you prefer, you can skip over to the ride test video. I should mention before continuing, I'm not getting paid to do this video review. Citrus Cycles, of course, sells lots of different models of e-bikes, and we want to help you find the perfect e-bike for your needs. So I'm going to always be as honest and transparent in the videos as I can, tell you things I like and don't like. Of course, if you end up buying an e-bike from us, any e-bike, it doesn't matter whether it be this one, we want you to find the perfect e-bike, then of course that's definitely going to help me out. Now, the Homage and the Culture, both from Riesenmüller, do use the same frame. This is the Homage, and this is the Culture. You can see it's a different color, obviously, but it's actually the same frame. That can be a bit confusing. So you can visit our website at citruscycles.ca for the complete details of the differences between the two. But here's kind of a quick summary to help you if you're kind of trying to decide between these two bikes. The Culture really focuses on a very, very upright riding position. You can see a really high elevated stem there, and we also have these swept back bars. And I should mention, we do have an in-depth video review and a ride test of the Culture on our website, so you can check that out. This is really best suited for urban riding and light trails. Now, the Homage is still very upright riding position, but we have a little bit of a wider bars here, so it makes it more suitable for any terrain. The Homage also upgrades you to air suspension rather than a spring suspension on the Culture, and you've got that option of the off-road capable tires. And the biggest thing is you've got the option of dual batteries on the Homage, so you can ride anywhere you want to go all day long if you wish. That isn't available on the Culture. The Homage also includes a much brighter light that has a high beam switch and an integrated brake light, and I will get to that a little bit later. So with the Homage, you don't get the front rack like you do on the Culture. You can see the Culture has a little bit of a less bright light there as well, as I was mentioning. But with the Homage, you can upgrade to the Rohloff, which is really awesome. And then, of course, you get those knobby tires. And the other upgrade option with the Homage is you can go with the new Kiox display rather than the Intuvia. So all of those upgrades kind of give you an idea that the Homage was designed to handle a little bit more, whereas the Culture is ideal for riding on paved roads and light gravel trails. The Homage, along with Riesenmüller's D-Lite, Culture, and Load e-bikes, use what R&M calls control technology. This consists of two components, a front suspension fork and a rear swing arm and shock. There, you can see the shock there. So many bikes obviously come with a front suspension fork, and with good reason. It's going to give you more comfort by reducing the impact of the bumps or uneven surfaces and smooths out the ride. And the neat thing is that less bumps means less fatigue for your upper body. So you are going to be able to ride on longer rides. Your arms aren't trying to cushion the impact of the bumps. It also gives you more control over uneven surfaces because you aren't struggling to maintain control over your bike in the rough sections. Now, of course, suspension forks are really common on e-bikes. What makes this bike unique is that the rear wheel is on an independent swing arm here with a shock. And so that gives you similar benefits to the suspension fork in terms of increased comfort, reduced fatigue. But the reason R&M calls it control technology is that this independent rear swing arm is helping to keep the rear tire on the ground all of the time. So you have much more control over the bike, making you safe and secure. It's hard to explain, and I'm probably not doing a very good job of it, but if you can, come try it for yourself. And what you'll notice is the control technology is going to make you feel more confident, especially when traveling more quickly, which you often do on an e-bike, and especially with the hills like we have here in Ladysmith. You'll also notice a big difference on uneven terrain, roads with potholes, broken pavement, and of course on trails. But you'll also notice that because of that independent suspension, the bike tracks really well, especially around corners and at higher speeds. So there's a bit of a miscomprehension or misperception perhaps that a full suspension bike, as we might call this, is only for experts or for mountain bikers. In fact, it's ideal for anyone who isn't a super confident cyclist because it does give you that more control, more safety, more comfort. So not only is it improving your safety because you're able to handle difficult situations and difficult surface conditions, broken pavement, railway lines, gravel, and potholes, it also makes you more predictable in traffic, and that makes you safer because you're not swerving, to avoid the obstacles. You're not speeding up and slowing down. You're being more predictable, and that makes you safer. So when you have a bike that you love because it feels safe and comfortable and confident, you are going to ride it more often. You're going to take longer rides. Okay, so if you can come try it yourself, that would be awesome. Let me try to give you kind of a visual of the difference between a bike with the control technology and without it. So I'm just going to pick up the bike and I'm going to drop the rear wheel and see what happens. As soon as it gets contact with the ground, it maintains that contact. Now let me show you what happens with the bike without the control technology. Okay, so I have a Nevo here, which is very similar to the Homage, but doesn't have the control technology, so it's a fixed, there's no independent rear swing arm. So if I pick up the rear wheel and drop it, you can see it bounces. So it's not able to maintain that contact with the ground when I emulate going over a significant bump by dropping it. We'll show you that again. See, it bounces because it doesn't have the rear swing arm to keep it connected to the ground. Whereas the Homage, as soon as it dropped, it stayed contact with the ground. And that's kind of a good example of what I'm talking about, what the control technology does for you. The Homage comes with a Bosch power tube battery mounted here in the down tube. Now, a lot of times a step-through battery is mounted on the rear rack, and that can have a negative impact on the handling as it shifts the weight high into the back of the bike. Or they'll put it at the bottom of the seat tube, which is definitely good for balance, but that can make it a little bit harder for getting on and off. So I really like this placement, as it does seem to be ideal and well balanced, and yet it's still easy to get on and off the bike. Now you can get this configured with an optional dual battery. So you can see I've done that with this bike here. We've got a second battery here, so we've got the power pack battery, power tube battery in there, and it's really cool actually the way R&M has handled the integration of it here. Really easy to get to if you want to remove it for charging. Now of course you can charge it on the bike. You just open up the little flap here, charge it there. We've got this little latch here, lift up, and of course I'd have to remove the power pack battery first, but in here is the power tube battery. So it's a really beautiful integration, easy to get at, easy to put a spare in there, and then I love having the option of the second battery if you want to have that. Now you don't have to ride with both of them on. You can take that power pack battery off and ride with just the single battery. The cool thing about the way Bosch has done the dual batteries is it actually draws 5% from each battery and switches back and forth. The reason for that is that when a battery is continuously discharged, or continuously charged for that matter, it's under higher stress, and of course that stress can slightly decrease the lifespan of the battery. By alternating back and forth, that actually is going to prolong the lifespan of the battery because it's not under continuous stress. So that's a really clever way of handling it. The other really clever thing that Bosch has done is they purposefully made their batteries backwards and forwards compatible. In other words, this is a Bosch Power Pack 500. It's 500 watt hours, and the power tube is also 500 watt hours. A few years ago, 400 watt hours was the maximum capacity that Bosch was able to make. When they were able to make the 500, they purposely made it backwards compatible. So if you'd bought a Bosch bike, 3 or 4 years ago, it came with a 400 watt hour battery, you can walk into the shop, buy a 500, put it on, and ride away, and that's quite clever. The reason why Bosch requires Riesenmüller or any company that's using their motor to use their battery is they know that well into the future they're going to have you covered. So not only are they making things backwards compatible when they can, but they're also ensuring they have a good inventory of those batteries well into the future. If you get a bike where the manufacturer of the motor, such as Shimano or Brose, has allowed the bike manufacturer to develop their own battery, that can look really nice, but the downside is that you are now relying on that bike manufacturer to have those batteries well into the future. And a lot of times those manufacturers will come with a new battery every year, every few years, and it's unlikely that they're going to be able to be in a position to maintain inventory of all those different batteries. So it's nice with the Bosch system, it's a standard Bosch battery, even though it's a Riesenmüller bike, and Bosch has got you covered with the battery capability. So you may be wondering, okay, is it worth getting a bike with the dual battery? Now, you don't have to. You could certainly, if you really wanted the extra range and didn't want the second battery because you feel like it makes the step-through area there too small, you can get a spare power tube battery, bring it along in the rack, and then switch it out when you need to. Now, of course, and Riesenmüller has done a really great job of making that easy to do because of this integrated cover here. Pull that off, put the battery in, you're good to go. Some other manufacturers, in fact, most other manufacturers, let's take a look at this Bulls bike here, for example, they're actually putting an aluminum plate on the battery itself, which definitely makes it harder to swap out because now you either have to not have that plate on, and so there's going to be, the battery's going to be exposed, which, isn't a big deal, but it doesn't look very nice, and you'll get dirt in there, or you're going to have to take that aluminum plate off, take the bolts off, and that sort of thing. That's not so fun. So even if you decide not to get the spare, the dual battery, you bring a spare along, really easy to change like that. Now, the thing is, you can't change a single battery bike to a dual battery bike later on. So if you decide, I don't think I'm going to ride that far, and then change your mind, unfortunately, you can't change it later. So if you think you're going to need the dual batteries, get it from the beginning. And from my experience, we have lots of customers that come in and tell us they're riding their bikes far more than they ever imagined. There's so much you can discover on your e-bike. For myself, I love having the dual battery bikes because I tend to explore. I see a hill and think, oh, I've never been up there. I'm gonna ride up to the top of the hill and see what's there. So if you wanna ride all day like I do, or you just wanna put the assistance on the highest level and not worry about running out of battery, then it's definitely worth considering the dual battery option. Now let me show you the battery removal, and as I mentioned, we can charge the batteries on the bike, or we can take the batteries off and charge them off the bike. Okay, so I just grabbed the key here, and the key is the same for both batteries. Each battery locks on independently and is actually the same key for the ABUS folding alarm lock, which I'll show you in a few minutes. So the power pack battery can be removed by putting the key in, turning it, and then just pulling up. You can see you've got this handy dandy carrying handle here, and that just comes right off. Now to put the battery back on, you don't need the key, but the power tube battery you do need the key on. So you can see you can certainly ride with the second battery off. That definitely opens up the step-through space here. Bosch gives you a little plug that covers the electrical contacts there to keep them nice and clean while you're riding. And so it's not actually a bad look to have the mounting point here for the second battery and ride without the second battery on. So now that I've got that power pack off, I can open up this cover here a little bit more, and now you can see that the power tube battery is in here. Riesenmüller's added a carrying handle, which is handy. We just put the key in the side here, and it being the Bosch power tube system, what happens is when I turn the key, it releases it one step, but I have to press the button to release it. It's a safety measure because some of the batteries open from the bottom, like on the Nevo, for example. You can see the battery comes out the bottom, and you wouldn't want to turn the key and have the battery come crashing to the ground. So once you've unlocked it, then you simply press the button here, and then you can pull it out. I do actually really like the way this battery is mounted on this bike, because this cover here makes it really easy to access to get it on and off. You know, it's a beautiful integration on the Nevo. You can see with the battery coming out the bottom there, but that's a little bit less convenient to get out than on the top one here. And when you're putting the battery back in, the power tube battery does require that you put the key in and turn it in order to secure the power tube battery and get it in there. As I mentioned earlier, the Homage, GT Vario, and GX Rohloff use the maintenance-free Gates carbon belt. This means you can shift while you're stopped or while you're riding. Now, to save money, you can get the Homage in the Touring Edition. This uses a traditional chain, an 11-speed 11 to 42 tooth cassette, and the Shimano Dior XT derailleur, which is a nice upgrade in terms of the Shimano level. It's quite a ways up there from the entry-level components you often see on e-bikes. Now, if you get the Homage Touring, you will want to keep your chain, cassette, and derailleur cleaned, oiled, and adjusted, and every few thousand kilometers you are going to have to replace those items, as they will wear out just like on any bike. The thing is, you're going to ride your e-bike a lot more than a regular bike, and so those things may wear a little bit more quickly than you're expecting. So if you upgrade to the GT Vario or the GX Rohloff, then you get this Gates carbon belt instead of a chain. The belt is maintenance-free and generally lasts quite a bit longer than a chain. So for myself, if I can get a bike with a belt, I do, because I ride a lot in the rain. And when I get home from a ride, I don't want to have to then worry about cleaning my bike. I don't have time. You know, I'd rather spend that time riding rather than maintaining or cleaning my bike. One of the interesting things about the Homage up the front here is that, unlike the Culture, they don't include a belt guard. It's something we're looking into to see if we could retrofit that later. Now, I haven't found it a problem because we do have this fairly small sprocket on the front here, and generally you're not going to have problems with the belt isn't dirty or anything like that, but it's definitely something that we could check into for you. In order to use a Gates carbon belt to take advantage of all those great things it has to offer, Riesenmüller has to do two things. The first is to figure out how are you going to replace the belt. So on a traditional frame bike, such as this bike over here, you can see that the chain runs above and below the chainstay here. And so that means if you need to replace the chain, or if this bike had a belt, well, let's talk about the chain first. If you replace the chain, you'd simply break the chain, pass it through, put the new chain on, put a master link in, and you're good to go. Obviously, with a belt, you can't break the belt to put it in. So then what are you going to do? Well, for a lot of manufacturers, they'll actually put a brake in the frame. Somewhere back here in the rear triangle, they'll have a little, maybe a bolt or two that you loosen off, take out a piece, and now you can pass the belt back through the rear triangle so that you don't have to worry about breaking the belt, which again, you can't do. Now, Riesenmüller, that's the first way. Riesenmüller decided that's not a good idea, and so they actually designed the frame here such that it doesn't actually require a brake in the frame. You can actually drop the rear wheel, put a new belt on, and you're good to go, because the belt here is actually running above the chainstay, not above and below it. It's part of the whole back section here with the rear triangle. And that's actually a new feature in the 2019 model. They actually redesigned this independent swing arm. They took a lot of the ideas from the D-Lite. It's essentially the same as the D-Lite, because in the past they were required to use a chain because the design didn't accommodate the belt without breaking the frame. So there's no break in the frame, which is awesome. Okay. So the second thing we have to do is we have to use a different transmission in order to change gears to make it easier to go up hills, or so that you can pedal quickly at higher speeds without spinning your legs too fast. With a chain, of course, the chain just jumps up and down the cassette. So here's the cassette back there. The chain just jumps up and down those gears, and that's what allows you to change gears. Obviously, the belt can't jump up and down those gears because it can't change lengths. Now, the belt, and that's an important note here, the belt can't change lengths, and it shouldn't change lengths, and the tension has to be the same throughout the ride. With a full suspension bike, that's a problem, because your rear swing arm there is going to cause the tension on the belt to change. R&M was very clever, and they've got this really cool pivot point here that also on the Rohloff is a little bit different, because it actually also acts as a snubber, which is required with the Rohloff to maintain the tension and to prevent it from ratcheting over those sprockets at the back there. So they kind of found the perfect spot to design that, so that no matter what happens with the tension on the belt, no matter what happens with your rear tire going up and down, the tension is the same throughout. So that's quite clever. Now, as I was saying, so the belt can't jump up and down. So we have to put all of the gears inside the hub. And that's a great idea, because now, they're not exposed to the elements, a lot less maintenance, things aren't going to go out of adjustment. So we can go with a CVT, which is what they use on the Homage GT Vario. Vario is what they call their bikes that use the Enviolo CVT powered by Nuvinci. So it used to be called Nuvinci, now the company's called Enviolo. The idea is the same. It's a continuously variable transmission. So there's no specific gears, it's infinitely variable. So if I take a look at the control here, you can see we've got a little cyclist heading up a hill, and if I want it to be harder to pedal, I simply twist here, and you can see that it's getting level, so that's going to be harder to pedal. Twist it again up the hill, and that's going to make it easier to pedal. And now you may have noticed that I was shifting while the bike was stopped. It wasn't moving, and I was able to make it easier or harder to pedal. On a traditional drivetrain, of course, you can't do that. If you stop suddenly, somebody cuts you off, or the light changes, and especially if you're trying to get up a hill and you're in the wrong gear because you're cruising along really fast, you can't shift, and it's really hard to get going. With this, no problem, and same with the Rohloff. While we're stopped, we can go ahead, shift to an easier gear, make it easier to get going, and that's one of the real benefits of going with the CVT or the Rohloff electronic shifting. And the Homage Vario does give you a 380% gear ratio, so that means the highest or hardest gear to the lowest or easiest gear is a 380% ratio. The second option for using a Gates belt with the Homage is to go with the Homage GX Rohloff. And the Rohloff Speed Hub is an internally geared 14-speed transmission with electronic shifting made in Germany. Now, just like the Vario, you can shift while you're stopped or while you're coasting, and you can shift through all of the gears at once. I should mention that with the Vario, with the Nuvinci optimized hub by Enviolo, when you're stopped, you only have access to, I'm not sure, maybe 40% of the range. So I can't get this really, really steep while the bike is stopped, but of course while the bike is moving, I can get that much, much steeper. With the Rohloff, you can actually shift through all of the gears at once. It is electronic, so you press the button, shifts within 180 milliseconds. I'm going to press the button, hold the camera back here at the hub so you can hear it. There you go, 180 milliseconds at shift. If I press and hold the button, it'll shift 3 gears at once. There we go. So the Rohloff appeals to a lot of people because it has 14 specific gears. Instead of being continuously variable, it has a much wider gear ratio, and has proven itself to be incredibly durable. So we've had reports of customers with over 300,000 kilometers on their Rohloff. So if you're looking for a trouble-free solution, the Rohloff is worth considering. Unlike the Vario, it isn't continuously variable. There are 14 specific gears. But there isn't a mechanical cable adjusting the gear ratio like the Vario. So the Vario actually has two cables running from here, and that is a mechanical shift. With the Rohloff, it is actually electronic. So you simply press the button and it shifts immediately. As I mentioned earlier, it also has the auto downshift feature, which is really cool. As soon as you stop, it'll automatically downshift to an easier gear for you. Another really interesting thing is that Rohloff worked with Bosch so that when you shift, power from the Bosch motor is momentarily cut. This helps facilitate the shift, since any drivetrain, whether it be the Vario or traditional traditional chain cassette and derailleur, any drivetrain will shift a little bit easier if you kind of back off on the power a little bit while you're shifting. So the cool thing about this then is that you can actually keep pedaling and shift if you wish, because the system will cut power to the motor to make it easier. Now you will find that things can move a little bit smoother if you do coordinate your shifting, so that if you can shift when your pedals are up and down like that, there's no torque on the pedals, and so it'll shift really easily. Or of course you can briefly let up on your pedaling. You don't have to, but it certainly can help make the shifting a little bit smoother. So it sounds complicated, but it's really easy to use, very intuitive. I think it's going to be super popular because, you know, from a maintenance perspective, we don't have to worry about cable stretching, you don't have to worry about the gears not shifting or shifting when you don't expect them to, all those things that can happen with a traditional drivetrain. From a maintenance perspective, all you have to worry about is an annual oil change, and that's actually really easy to do yourself. Of course, any bike shop can do it as well. We have a kit for that. Now, the other big advantage of the Rohloff is that it has a huge 520% gear ratio compared to the 380% on the Vario with the new Vinci hub by Violo. So that means you can get a really, really low climbing gear to make it super easy to climb hills. Well, the high gear means you can pedal fast down hills if you want to. In other words, with the Rohloff, you can climb super steep hills much easier, and the lower gear is just so much lower. So this became evident to me when during a ride test I climbed a hill with a 30% gradient. I managed just fine with the Vario, no problem. And then I hopped on with the Rohloff, and wow, I didn't have to pedal nearly as hard to keep the momentum. In other words, it was easier to pedal, but of course I was going a little bit slower because I wasn't putting as much effort in. So it's not that the gear ratio is giving you more power, it just means that there's less power required to keep the bike rolling along. It also means in the high gear you can keep pedaling above 50 kilometers an hour without, you know, that hamster wheel effect where your legs are spinning too quickly and it's really hard to keep up. Okay, so there's all these advantages with either the Vario or the Rohloff. You can shift while you're stopped. You don't have to worry about downshifting. There's less maintenance. What's, the downside? Why wouldn't you go with this? Well, the combination of the Vario, or especially the Rohloff and the belt, is a bigger investment than a regular drivetrain. But keep in mind, it'll probably save you money in the long run. Chains, cassettes, and derailleurs every few thousand kilometers add up. And as well, for me, it saves me time, and that's valuable because then I have more time on my bike or with my family and less time cleaning it. So the Homage comes with the Supernova M99 Mini on the front and an incredibly bright Supernova brake light on the back that brightens when you pull either of the brake levers. I'll show that to you, so that motorists know when you're stopping. So there we go, you can see it brightens when I pull either of the brake levers. The light at the front gives you 600 lumens during the daytime setting, and the cool thing is here's a high beam button here. You press that, you can see it actually even illuminates to remind you that your high beams are on, and then you get 1250 lumens, which is incredibly bright. You turn the light off, and you can see in there that there are actually 10 automotive grade LEDs and some mirrors. So if you ride at night, this is one of the few lights that I've tried where I'm not riding, I can't actually ride faster than my light can illuminate the road ahead of me. And that's really important because you don't want to ride faster than your light can show. And this tail light, you can actually see it from almost a kilometer away. So safety is a big important feature to Riesenmuller. That's why they've got the control technology. That's why they give you an incredibly bright front and rear light. So we've talked about comfort from the perspective of the control technology. Let's talk about how we've also set up the bike to be in a fairly comfortable elevated riding position so you can see where you're going and be seen. You're not kind of hunched over and going to get back problems. Especially that control technology helps. If you've got back issues, it's really going to help smooth out the ride and really prevent a lot of the jarring effects that can really hurt your back. Rounding out the comfort aspect, we've got these Ergon comfortable grips. Those are the GP ones, so they're ergonomic and very comfortable. They are locking, so they're not going to swivel on you while you're riding. We've got a little bit of a rise in the handlebars here, a little bit of a back angle, but not too much, so that you still have lots of control over the bike. We've got the Selle Royale looking gel saddle. It's quite comfortable, but of course, if you find that you don't love the saddle, that's easy to change. The pedals are something I would change myself, and that's a hard thing for any bike manufacturer to do. Some bikes are even coming to us without pedals because they recognize that customers have their own personal preference. So on the Rohloff GX, or the GX Rohloff Homage, you can see again we've got these knobbier tires. They are anticipating that you're maybe going to ride this a little bit more off-road because you've got the wider gear ratio, you can climb steeper hills, and so they put these metal pedals here with some pins on it. I would probably change those out to something that's a little bit wider and maybe have removable pins. With the GT Vario here, you can see a little bit of a less aggressive pedal. We do have reflectors in them both, which is nice, and a little bit of a rubber coating on here to prevent you from maybe cutting up your shins. But again, that's something that I would change, but that's a personal preference. Otherwise, the setup is really very comfortable. And from a safety perspective, we have the Magura MT4 E brakes. The E indicates that they've got a little wire here that sends a signal to the brake light when you are braking to make that light much brighter when you brake. Pull on either of those, so they both have that wire in there. We do have adjustability here. You will need an Allen key, so if you want to bring these levers closer or further away, you can do that. They are hydraulic brakes, of course. We have a 180 millimeter rotor up front and on the back here. And of course, it's important to have hydraulic disc brakes on an e-bike because you do want to be able to stop very quickly and easily without requiring a lot of your force. So with the hydraulic fluid being in the hoses here, it's just like your vehicle. You aren't relying on the strength of your hands to stop the bike. The hydraulic fluid is helping you out. So you could literally stop this bike down the steepest hill here in Ladysmith with one finger on each brake lever. Hydraulic brakes also mean there's less maintenance or adjustment. The cable isn't going to stretch, rust, or break and cause you problems. And they are self-adjusting. So as the brake pads wear, and of course brake pads do wear and eventually need to be replaced, they actually self-adjust so that you don't lose any of your stopping power. Also, from a safety perspective, these Schwalbe Supermoto X, in the case of the Homage Vario that we're looking at here, we do have the reflective sidewall striping, which is great to see. They have a high degree of puncture resistance. They're nice and wide, a 2.4-inch wide tire. What's really neat about these tires is they have a very rounded profile. You can see they're actually, a very large tire here. They are what we call a balloon tire. So there's a high volume of air in here that you can run at low pressure. And that helps with traction and comfort and stability. And with this rounded profile, when you're riding on pavement, you're kind of really only running on the center channel here. So it's not like the width of the tire increases the rolling resistance, which is nice. But once you get into gravel or sand or anything that's soft, then the rest of the tire starts to come into play and gives you lots of traction and stability. And it's really neat to ride with these tires. We've got a trail around here that a certain section gets into really soft sand, and you don't have that problem that you sometimes have with a narrow tire where you're kind of sinking in and having a hard time controlling the bike. Of course, if we go with the GX Rohloff version of the Homage, then you do get these Rock Razor tires, also a really great tire. We don't have the reflective sidewall, but we do end up having reflectors on the tire, or on the spokes. Knobbier design, so really the only downside with the Supermoto X, they're a great tire, but because they don't have knobs, when you get into mud, especially deep mud, there's just not enough knobbiness, so to speak, in order to really dig into the mud. Whereas with the Rock Razor here, you've got that smaller ones in the middle, which is quite clever because when you're rolling along the pavement, the smaller ones aren't really noisy, don't have a lot of rolling resistance, but when you do get into the trail and you've got mud or really wet sections, then these larger ones on the side here really help to dig in, especially when you're cornering as well. So I do really appreciate the safety that they've considered when choosing the tires and again making them highly puncture resistant. And speaking of safety, there's even a reflector on the front fork here. And to keep your bike safe, Riesenmüller has included the Avis Bordeaux folding alarm lock, and they've given you this great place to mount it on the bike here, so you're not worried about where you're going to put it. You're going to put it in a bag, and maybe you forgot to bring it along, and you don't want to take the risk of not locking up your bike. So it's nice having that mounting spot there. And the other clever thing is that the key that you use for the lock here is the same key that we use for the batteries, so you only need one key. So to release the lock, you just open it up like that, and that'll pop right out. Really easy to get to. And if you haven't seen one of these locks before, they're really quite clever. So similar to a U-lock, these are actual steel bars here. They are coated in rubber to protect the frame. And unlike a U-lock though, as you can see, it folds up nice and small and is easy to store on the bike or wherever you wish. And it's also really easy when you unfold it to be able to, wrap that around your frame, around the seat post, and then around whatever you're locking it to. Sometimes with a U-lock, it's not only hard to bring it along, but it's also hard to wrap it around the frame. Okay, so let me show you how this works. We'll put the key in the side here and turn it. And interestingly, it actually unlocks from the opposite side. It's kind of an anti-pick feature. And you'll notice that there's two knobs in here. So if I put it into the first position, then the lock isn't armed. And that's important because when you're riding, you don't want the alarm going off. And you know it's not armed because you can actually fold it up and put it away. If I unfold it here and put it in the second position, then it's going to be armed. There we go. And you need the key in to do that. There we go. And now it's armed. And so now if I tried to fold it up, you'll see that it doesn't fold up because it's all the way in there. So now when I remove the key, it's going to be armed. It's going to beep to let me know. Now I'm going to touch it. It's going to beep a little bit to give me a warning. And then I'm going to move it a fair bit as if I were tampering with the bike. And the alarm's going to get really loud. It's 100 decibels. So you may want to turn the volume down. So again, I just move it, you see it's got that kind of a warning beep, and then if I leave it for a while, it's going to stop beeping. Good. But if I now move it some more, there's the 100 decibel alarm. And so I'm going to put the key in, and there we go, it's off. Now the cool thing is, after the alarm sounds for a while, it's going to stop and rest for a few seconds and then go again, and that way it isn't going to completely kill your battery. Speaking of the battery, there is a removable kind of a watch style battery in there, and you do need the key to remove it, so it's not like somebody could come along and disable it by removing the battery. And it should give you a low battery warning as well. So there, now I'm back in the first position. It's not armed. I can take the key out. It's not going to beep at me, and I can go ahead and put it back on the bike. While we're back here looking at the lock, I should point out the rack. This is a fantastic rack. It is a rack time compatible rack here. We've got the slots in there for it. It has a max rated capacity of 20 kilos, which kind of surprises me because when you look at the rack, it's actually integral to the frame here. You can see it's welded onto the seat post, and this is actually all part of the frame here. So what's interesting is this rack really helps to make the bike laterally stiff. So even though it's a step-through, as you'll see in the ride test video, you can actually go mountain biking with it because there's not any frame flex. It's not going to be difficult to handle. It handles really, really well. It doesn't ride like a step-through at all. And part of that is because of this really clever integration of the rack here. The rack is also part of the suspension system because it's you've got the rear tire here on its own independent swing arm. That means if you go grocery shopping and you put your eggs in here and then you decide to go mountain biking on the way home, and don't laugh because I've done that a few times, your suspension is helping to isolate your eggs or whatever else you've got on the rack, perhaps a child in a child seat. It's helping to isolate that from all of the bumps. So it's actually a really smooth ride for whatever cargo or passenger you've got on the rack, which is quite clever. Another clever thing is they do have these blocker bars here so that you can hang your bags on here and they're not going to hit the spokes. So that's a nice feature as well. Another thing I love about the R&M bikes is rather than a spring-loaded rattle trap that can be really noisy when you're riding, they've used this bungee cord here, which is really quiet, and you can actually adjust it. So you just move this, slide it around here. Now it's larger, and I can put something under there and clamp it down. And when I get it on there, just move the slider here, and that tightens it up. So I really like that strap. It's quite clever. And while we're still hanging out at the back of the bike here, why don't I point out the fenders. These are SKS fenders, really well mounted. We've got a fender stay there, and we're also connected at the bottom of the frame there, so it's nice and wide, gives you lots of full coverage, and doesn't rattle around or isn't going to come loose. So that's nice. It's connected to the frame here, and we do have these kind of adjustable stays that also have a bit of almost kind of a quick release feature, in that for some reason you did go mountain biking like I'm prone to do, and you got a stick or something in the fender. It's unlikely to completely destroy your fender, because these will actually pop out to help with that. So that's nice with the fenders. Again, at the back here we've got the kickstand, and you can see it's actually kind of integrated into the frame here. They've got mounting points here, and so that helps it to be very secure. The nice thing is that if the pedals move while the kickstand is down, they're not going to collide with it as well, and it makes it very stable. Speaking of stability, while you've got your kickstand down, this is kind of cool as well. Up at the headset here, we do have this block lock feature here. So what that means is that I can only turn the handlebars a certain distance before it prevents it from turning further and causing, say, the bike to fall over, or the forks to hit the frame or something like that. So just all these kind of little things show that R&M puts a lot of thought into their bikes. Obviously, somebody there, or a lot of people there, are riding them and testing them out and really finding out the things that are really important. So it's nice to see all of that attention to detail, which is really what you expect from a bike that is made in Germany. So I think I've talked about all of the features of the bike. As I'm getting into talking about the Bosch system, I'm looking at the rear shock here and thinking, oh, I might have forgot to mention this is a air fork and air shock. You can see there's actually a valve here, so you can adjust the air based on your riding preference or your weight. And up at the front here, we can do that as well. This is the Sun Tour Ion fork, and at the back here, it is a X Fusion, and it's also obviously air, because we've got the adjustment there. And we do have a compression rebound settings that you can adjust as well. And there's a little handy ring here, so you can move that back, and when you ride, you can use that to set up your sag or to set up the air that you need in the shock. Okay, so let's talk about the Bosch mid-drive that we have here. This is Bosch's highest torque motor. It's the Bosch Performance Line CX. I love having the CX drive because we do have lots of torque, 75 Newton meters of torque. And I talk about torque because torque is what you need to get up the hills. A lot of times we talk about the wattage rating on the motor, and honestly, those numbers aren't that useful. A lot of them are inflated, and really, any e-bike is going to be able to get you up to that 32 km/h cutoff speed. What you really care is, can it get you up the hills? And definitely with all that torque in the Bosch system, you can definitely get up the hills. And that's one of the benefits of a mid-drive like the Bosch Performance Line CX here, is that it is driving the chain, or in the case of this bike, the belt. And that makes it feel really natural, because that's how your bike is normally propelled. It also means that when you change your gear ratio on the NVLO hub here, or if you've got the cassette or you've got the Rohloff, when you make those changes in your transmission, it immediately impacts on the motor. So when you choose an easier gear to climb a hill, it also makes it easier for the motor. That's going to make it more efficient, give you more range, and also give you more hill climbing capability. If you go with a bike with a motor in the rear tire, or the front tire, which is not advisable, if you put it in the rear tire, then you're going to find that when you change gears, it has no impact on the motor, because the motor is turning the wheel and not the chain or the belt. So it's really important to have a mid-drive to give you that torque, to give you that mechanical advantage. Gives you a more natural feeling. It really feels very natural, because you're already used to your bike being propelled by turning the chain or the belt, and in this case, it's just helping you out. In fact, the Bosch system kind of knows what you're doing, because it senses your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, your cadence, that is how quickly your legs are moving, and the speed of the bike. You can see there's a speed sensor back there and a magnet on one of these spokes to tell it how fast it's going, and it makes those calculations 1,000 times per second. So it's really like it's reading your mind. And so when you choose a level of assistance, it actually knows how hard you're working and can kind of match that power. So it's a very natural feeling. The weight is well balanced. It's in the middle of the bike and low, which is really great to see. And when we come up here to the display, on this particular bike we've got the Kiox display, which I'll talk about in a few moments, and you can also get it with the Intuvia, which I'll show you as well. And we've got this remote. The remote is slightly different for the Kiox displays for the Intuvia, so I'll explain that as well in a few moments. But one of the great things about the CX is not only are you getting lots of torque, but we've got a really neat mode. So we've got it off right now. I'll just press the plus. I'll go up to Eco, and Eco is going to give you 50% of your input power. Remember how I was saying it's kind of reading your mind by measuring your torque, speed, and cadence 1,000 times per second. And so basically it's figuring out what you're doing and then on Eco matching that by 50%. That's going to give you tremendous range, but not a whole lot of assistance. When you move up to Tour, now you're getting 120% of your input power. So it's like, having a clone, having yourself helping you out, doing exactly what you're doing, and again, that helps to make it feel very, very natural. The cool thing about having the CX is we can optionally have sport mode, or we can have EMTB. So on another bike I can show you I've got EMTB enabled, and EMTB is a dynamic adaptive mode. So remember I was saying we've got that torque sensing capability, which is really important. So it knows how hard you're working, and normally, if you're riding a bike and you see a big hill coming, you start pedaling harder. And so on EMTB mode, the Bosch system knows you're working harder and gives you more power. When you get to the top of the hill, you're going to ease off on your pedaling, and it recognizes that, and then it gives you a little bit less power. So Bosch originally designed that EMTB mode for mountain biking. That's what EMTB stands for, electric mountain biking. Because the last thing you want to do if you're riding in a difficult section of road or trail is to be adjusting your levels back and forth all the time. So that's kind of a set it and forget it mode. You can just ride and it automatically adjusts for you. Even if you're not mountain biking, that can be really useful, because if you're like me, you put it on turbo, which is the highest level here. I'll press the plus and there we go to turbo, and to make it up the hill, and then you forget that it's there and you keep riding the rest of the ride and you're thinking, oh, my battery level isn't as much as I expected it to be. Oh, I forgot I was on turbo, and you want to move it down. So having that automatic setting can definitely be really helpful, and that's one of the features found in the CX, because Bosch has they have a number of different drive units. They start down at the Active Line, which is very low torque, almost half the torque of this motor. Then the Active Line Plus, which is 50 Newton meters of torque, so quite a bit less torque than the CX. Then there's the Performance Line, which is 63 Newton meters, and then the CX, which is 75 Newton meters of torque. So lots of torque. You've got the EMTB mode. You also have support for higher RPM, so you can actually spin your legs really, really quickly and still get support from the motor, which is really nice. So this is Bosch's Kiox display. It's one of 3 different display options available here in North America. It is full color, it uses Gorilla Glass, and it's magnetically attached to the bike, so I can just pull that off and put it back on like that. And the idea is that if you find yourself in a situation where the display exits the bike unexpectedly, perhaps you're mountain biking and you're prone to crashing, then by using Gorilla Glass and magnets here, it's unlikely that this is actually going to suffer an impact, when instead it could actually be dislodged, and then the Gorilla Glass will protect it. So it's quite a clever idea, a good way of making it easy to get on and off, but also helping to protect the display. So it's fairly compact, but we've got lots of information on the display here. It is, there's a couple of different ways it can be mounted to the bike. So it is magnetic, and you can see in this particular bike, the manufacturer has kind of integrated their own stem system that the display mounts into. In fact, we've got this little slide off here that you can access the USB port. So there is a USB port under there. Let's show that to you while I turn the display off. There we go. And that's pretty clever, because with the Kiox display, unlike previous displays, this actually does provide enough power to not only maintain the charge on a phone, such as an iPhone, but it actually provides enough power to charge it up. Another option for mounting it, you can see this is more of a standard Bosch mount system. This is the Bosch mounting system, and it mounts onto the top of the stem there, just like that. So there are a number of advantages to the Kiox display. It's color, we've got the Gorilla Glass, it's magnetic, easy to get on and off. And of course that USB port provides enough power to actually charge a device. It also has Bluetooth enabled, so we can actually set up a heart rate monitor, and you can view that on the screen. Currently, that's the only feature that's enabled with the Bluetooth, but we do expect Bosch to continually update this. In fact, even since the first prototype came out, there's been some changes, such as the fact that you can cycle back and forth through all the displays instead of it ending at the end. And so we expect them to release an app, and that app will have additional features that will allow you to control some of the bike through your phone, and we're excited to see what Bosch will come up with for that. So with the remote over here, with the Kiox display, it's a little bit more advanced than the previous remote with the Intuvia, but still really easy to use. Obviously, you've got the plus and the minus buttons here for the assistance level, and then you've got a right and a left button that allows you to cycle through the screens, and then a select button down here. So on the main screen here, you can see the current time is always displayed, current level of assistance is always displayed, whether your lights are on or not is displayed there, and also you can always see your battery level in the top right hand corner. And this is quite unique. In the past we could only see a number of bars for the level of battery life, and now we see an actual percentage, which is really exciting to see. On this particular screen, kind of the first screen here, we also see our current speed. And down here, this is really cool. When you're riding the bike, let me go to a different level of assistance, for example, Eco. And you see it also, it's color coded here. So Eco is green, and Tour is blue. We've got purple for sport, and all the way up to Turbo is red. And this little bar here, there's actually two bars when you're cycling. One bar is actually showing you how much the motor is helping you out, and the other bar is showing you how much you are helping the bike out. So that's pretty clever, and when I do the ride test video, you can check that out, and you can see that moving. It's a little bit easier to see when I'm riding. Let me pop over to a bike with the electronic shifting to show you the E-shift feature as well. So now we're looking at the Kiox display on a bike with the electronic shifting. This actually has the Rohloff E-shift, and so you can see a little indicator of the gear that we're in right there. And so when I press the electronic shifting button on the bike, you can see that changes. Of course, with the Rohloff, I can hold the button and shift 3 at a time. So my two complaints about the Kiox so far is that this number is a little bit small to read there. I'm sorry if it's out of focus. I've got a protective film on this display as well, which makes it a little bit harder to read. So, you know, when you're sitting back here and you're wearing glasses like I am when you're going on a bumpy road, sometimes I have a hard time reading that number. Now, you know, I actually don't really care because I go by feel rather than what number I'm in, but I wouldn't mind seeing that a little bit bigger. The other complaint I have about the Kiox display also relates to the E-shift. If I press the right button here to go to my next screen, and you'll notice now it doesn't indicate the gear that we're on, but that's okay. When I press the button, you'll see that it actually flashes momentarily to tell me, there we go, that I'm now an 11 out of 14, which is also kind of cool. But the thing is if I shift and then try to press the plus button to change levels of assistance, nothing happens while that little, so this here prevents the plus and minus button from working while it's on the display. Now, it's a small thing because look, it isn't there for that long, but just keep in mind, if I do a rapid succession of shift and level adjustment, it's not going to work unless I first dismiss that screen. So I press the down shift button, and then I can press that button, and that makes it go away. Let me show that again. So that's the kind of the OK button. So I'll see if I can do this with one hand. Press the down shift and then hit OK, and it's gone right away. Now I can press the plus button. But it would be nice if when you adjust the gear shifting, that it will actually allow you to press the plus and minus. Now, of course, easy solution. You know, you're probably not going to ride on this screen. Most people are riding on the main screen, and on the main screen that doesn't happen at all. We don't have that pop-up that is showing you the gear because it's right there, so I can shift up and press the plus right away, and it works quite well. Okay, and before I get into details on the other screens, I'll just conclude on here. This is really interesting. This is, I don't know if you can see it, let me try changing here, yeah. There's two bars here. This is what Bosch calls your performance evaluator. So as you're riding, the kind of the middle here is going to be your average speed. That is there. And there's going to be a white bar showing your current speed relative to your average speed. So if I'm going faster than my average speed, it'll be kind of over here. And if I'm going slower than my average speed, then it'll be over there. So it's kind of a neat thing. Obviously, you're seeing your main speed here, but compared to your average, you can actually look at that little bar there. And again, it's easier to demonstrate while I'm riding the bike. And down here you can see which particular screen that I'm on, and to move between the screens you've got the right and the left button here. So I'll press the right button, and now we've got a screen, and again at the top we still always have our current speed, current level of assistance, your lights, and the battery level. And I'm seeing a little bit of bars coming across with my camera here. I apologize for that, and I probably see the red light as well from the camera reflecting. This display is very, very easy to read. I've got to say that's one of my favorite features about it is the contrast is great. In bright sunlight I can see it no problem, and see it from all angles. So this isn't an adjustable angle like say with the Intuvia display, but that doesn't seem to be necessary because I can see it from any angle, and really easy to see in the dark as well. So in this display we see the clock and the current range. This is a dual battery bike, so you can see I've got tremendous range on that. I've got my trip distance on the next screen and my ride time. One thing we're wondering about is with the app that'll be coming out, will we actually be able to customize these displays? That would be kind of cool. Now here's an interesting thing, and Bosch really markets the Kiox display for riders that are very active and fitness oriented and want stats, especially because of that Bluetooth integration for the heart rate monitor, which is really cool. But this is really neat as well. This is actually showing you your power input and wattage, so how hard you're pedaling. So that's a really neat thing to kind of keep your eye on and see how hard you're working at it. And also you can see your cadence down here as well. The next screen, we've got the average speed compared to your maximum speed at the bottom there. And on this screen, we've got 4 different options that are shown. We've got your range, your distance, your wattage, and your cadence. Sorry, not your cadence, your heart rate. And here we've got a big heart rate screen as well if you have a Bluetooth heart rate monitor enabled. One more swipe to the right here gives us again the time at the top and your current battery level, and this is a dual battery bike, so you see the battery level of each bike. And also your settings button is accessible from here. So let me step you through the settings. Basically you get over to this screen and press kind of the select or OK button on here. It's going to pop me into the settings. Here we've got my bike, so let's go there first. And this is really cool. We can reset our trip stats, but what I love about this is you can actually configure it to automatically reset for you. So something that often happened to me with the Intuvia display is I'd forget to reset my trip stats at the beginning. I'd be going along and I'd be wondering, oh, how far have I gone? Oh, I forgot to reset it. It includes yesterday's, and I don't remember what yesterday's was. So this is really cool. You can optionally tell it to auto reset once a day, after 4 hours, or never. So we'll hit the kind of the back button to get to the main screen there. And the up and down is, of course, allowing me to cycle between these. And then the square, the kind of diamond button, the OK or select button allows me to select. So I can actually reset my range calculator to kind of the theoretical or values rather than based on the last few kilometers that I've ridden. Because we do have, and I probably didn't mention that earlier, on the main screen you do have the range calculator. That's based on the last few kilometers that you've ridden and the amount of charge that's left in the battery. So when you reset that, that kind of ignores the last few kilometers that you've ridden and kind of projects forward what it thinks that would be. You can change your wheel circumference in here, which generally you're not going to need to do. And then we can also look at all the component values. So you can see this is the software version 1 of the Kiox display. And so we expect, from time to time, Bosch does release updates, and we expect to see some soon. There's our serial number and the part number. And this is really cool because same with your drive unit. You can look at the software version, the hardware version, the serial number, the part number, the number of operating hours, which is interesting. And this is where you see your odometer. So on the Intuvia display, that was something you could cycle through right on the main screen with the I button. In here, you kind of have to dive in a little bit. And so that's a frequent question as people have is like, where do I check my odometer? And that's in the My Bike under the settings, and there's your odometer under the drive unit. You can also look at your battery information, again, the serial number and part numbers, and all of that is there. Back button is going to take me back to the main screen, and a back again takes me back to the settings screen. Here's where you'd set up your Bluetooth, turning it on or off, so you can set up a heart rate monitor, or in the future, perhaps sync with an app. System settings is in here. This is where you can set your brightness, and right now it's automatic. It seems to work really, really well. So somewhere in there seems to be some sort of sensor, but you could turn that to automatic setting off if you want. The time. If your time is incorrect, now when we set up the bike, obviously we make sure the time is set up correctly. But if it's out by an hour or two and the minutes are correct, then it may be that you're just in the wrong time zone. So that's something that you can change. So you can set your time, you can set your date, and you can set your time zone. You can also choose whether you want 24 hours or 12 hours. And so once we select that, we just use the right or left button, or sorry, the select button to turn that feature on or off. So we can do 24 hours clock on or 24 hour clock off. And we can choose whether we want a light background on or off. And you can choose metric or imperial as well, along with your language. And you can do a factory reset from here as well if you've made changes to the settings that you don't want. And then we go with the information screen here, and it tells you that right now there isn't an app, but eventually there should be to register. There's some FAQs that you can access by scanning that little barcode on your smartphone. There's a little kind of tutorial here on how to actually use the Kiox, so that's kind of cool. Cycle through all that. All right. So if you forget anything, and then this is not particularly useful. This is just saying this certification information for the bike in terms of the FCC IDs and that sort of thing, UL certification. Bosch is always very careful to do certifications on all their batteries. And the battery that's built into the display right now, you can see the status on that as well. Hey, they even put their address in there. Not sure why license info, I'm not sure why that's there either, and I'm not sure why you need their contact information on your bike, but that's there as well. All right, so that's all the settings information from the display. Lots of options, and it's nice to be able to control all of that from the bike. So you can also choose to get the Homage with the kind of classic Intuvia display if you prefer. So the Intuvia display is removable. It slides on these rails here, and if you wish you can permanently mount it to the bike. There's a little spot there to put a screw through the bottom of the display holder and into the display itself. It does have a USB port here on the side that you can use to maintain the charge on a USB device. It doesn't provide a lot of amperage, so on iPhones, for example, it'll only maintain it, won't actually top it up. And we can also use that for programming as well. It is a nice, easy to read display. We can adjust the angle on here by rotating it on the handlebars on the display holder here. And so at the top we've got the current battery level, and this is indicated in a number of bars. So we've got 4 out of 5 bars. Over here, your current level of assistance and your current speed. Down here we do have a trip computer, including a clock, and we can cycle through all of that information using the I button on the display itself. And the display does have a built-in battery, so it will operate off of the bike, and you can check all of that information while it's off the bike. Now, while you're riding, it's best to keep your hands on the handlebars, so instead of using the I button over here, we'd use it on the remote. So on the remote here, you can adjust your levels. We've got the plus and the minus, so you can see we've got off, eco, tour, sport, although on this bike it's programmed as EMTB, so you'll see it flashes EMT on the bottom there. That's only available on the Bosch CX drive, and that's a dynamic adaptive mode that automatically adjusts based on your torque, that is how hard you're pedaling, and the plus again brings us up to turbo, and the minus of course brings us down. The I button over on the remote here will cycle through the trip information down on the bottom here, so we've got the clock. We've got our maximum speed, and that we can reset by pressing and holding the reset button. And that data is reset independently of the rest of the information. So though my maximum speed has been reset, my average speed has not. If I reset that, that will reset all of the rest of the data. So now when I cycle through, my trip time has been reset. The range, that can actually be reset. So the range is based on the last few kilometers that I've gone, the current battery level, and the level of assistance that I'm in. If I wish, I can press and hold the reset, and that will actually reset it to theoretical values rather than basing it on the last few kilometers that I actually rode. And we also have the odometer, of course, and trip distance, and back to our clock. You can activate the lights with the light button by pressing the light button here. It says lights off, and their little indicator disappears there, and now lights on and an indicator there as well. Other indicators that will show up, the Intuvia display is the only display from Bosch at this time that actually has shift recommendations. So the Bosch system has shift detection and can actually detect when you're shifting and will momentarily cut power to the drive unit to help prolong the lifespan of your drivetrain and make shifting easier. With the Intuvia display, it'll actually flash an arrow up or down to suggest if it thinks that you should be shifting to make yourself and the bike more efficient. You can turn that off if you wish, and to get into the programming menu on the Intuvia display, we press and hold the I and the reset button at the same time. This is where you can change your clock, so daylight savings time or something like that. You'll notice that you can actually either use the plus and minus over on the remote to adjust the time, or you can use the light button, and the power button will also adjust as well for you. Cycling through with the I button will bring you through other values that you can adjust, such as the wheel circumference, which of course you're not going to want to change. You can change your language. You can change the units from kilometers per hour to miles per hour. Your time format, right now we've got it in 12-hour, but you could change it to 24-hour clock. And this is where you turn the shift recommendations on or off. The rest of the data is informational, so you can see the number of hours your bike has been on, and then the various versions and serial numbers of the components of the bike. To exit the programming mode, we just press and hold the reset and I button again, and that should pop you back out to the main screen. As you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this bike. In fact, my wife has one, and well, I ride it a lot because I really like it. I've got her the Homage GX Rohloff. I love having the Rohloff. It's fantastic. So the features on this bike, like the control technology, the option to have the Gates carbon belt with the Enviolo or the Rohloff hub, the option of the dual battery, the super bright front light and those rear lights, all make it a very comfortable and safe e-bike that's going to last a really long time and require very little maintenance. So when you consider all of the upgrades on the bike, the quality, the fact that it's made in Germany, it is a really great value. However, what really makes this an awesome bike is how well it rides. So I'm going to take you on a ride test now, but if you'd like to come try it for yourself, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca to contact us. Well, I really enjoy the riding position of the Homage. It's quite upright and very comfortable. It's going to help with upper body issues, wrists, shoulders, neck, back, because it's very comfortable. Of course, that suspension, the control technology is helping, but it's also, moderately upright. Not as upright, say, as the Culture, for example. You can check out my video review of that on our website. But it's still very comfortable, very upright, but also you have good control over the bike. So I like the way that they've done a bit of swept back bars, but not too much, so that I could actually go mountain biking and stay in control of the bike, which is really important. And there's a good example of the control technology at play. This section of the road here, gravel shoulder, there's a pothole there that I'm aware of. I ride it every day, still haven't fixed it. And on a regular bike, you'd be inclined to swerve, maybe onto the shoulder, or if there's no cars behind you, into the lane. But if there is traffic, then maybe you're going to slow down because you don't want to get thrown by the pothole. The nice thing about this control technology is with the full suspension, just drove right through it, no problem. It, it wasn't uncomfortable, it wasn't unsafe. That allows me to maintain my heading and speed, makes me more predictable in traffic. Coming up to a big hill here that has a sharp corner in it, can get going pretty quickly. It's a great illustration of the benefits of the control technology. When my wife had her Nevo or Charger, any hardtail bike, this was a bit of a disincentive to her to ride because she didn't like this corner in this hill. She would slow down, of course, so that she would feel safe, but she was always worried because there's really not enough room for cars to pass you if you're going too slow. First time she got on her Homage, she went around that corner faster than she's ever done. really surprised because she was going, you know, almost the speed limit. And so when I talked to her about it afterwards, she said she just felt inherently more safe, more confident, more in control of the bike, and didn't feel the need to slow down as much. And that's kind of one of the benefits of the control technology, is it is helping you to feel more confident, well, because you are safer, because you've got both wheels tracking really well, and you're able to corner at higher speeds like I just did there. Another feature of the Homage I'd appreciate going down that hill is the integrated brake lights. It can be tricky at times if you've got a fast descent and a corner and you're trying to signal maybe. If I wanted to go in to do some grocery shopping, for example, partway down that hill I have to turn left, and one hand out to signal and or indicate you're slowing down, and one hand on the brake lever can be tricky. So it is nice knowing that as soon as I squeeze the brake levers, it is signaling to the traffic behind me that I am going to slow down. It's very obvious to a motorist what that means. They instinctively realize you're going to slow down and are prepared for that. And when you combine that with a helmet like the Lumos helmets, we have them in the store and on the website, they actually have integrated turn signals with a little remote that you can use on your handlebars. So you don't actually have to move your hands to signal. You can keep both hands on the brakes and let the helmet and the brake light signal your intention to traffic. So we had a major storm, a windstorm here a few weeks ago, and they are slowly getting cleaned up. But as you can see on the trail here on the sidewalk, this is a cycling path, by the way, I'm not riding on the sidewalk, there's a lot of debris. And what I like about these Supermoto X tires is I can just ride over everything. I'm not worried about you know, riding over sticks and branches, getting thrown off my bike, or having any difficulty controlling the bike. I can just drive right over everything. They also have a high degree of puncture resistance, so I'm not too concerned about that either. I can just keep on going. And that's the great thing about a bike like this, is nothing's going to prevent you from riding. You know, if you had a bike with narrower tires, you might turn around and go home and not ride until they get this cleaned up, and well, you might not get it cleaned up for a few more weeks. So it's nice having a bike that's just going to let you do what you want, when you want, go where you want to go, and not limit you, and that's important. A lot of studies are showing that when you get an e-bike, you're going to start riding more often and further distances. So you want a bike that's going to be able to handle those further distances and those more frequent rides and not limit you. I really am enjoying the riding position of this bike. It's very comfortable. It feels like a bike I could ride all day. With those dual batteries, I certainly could. I may have to stop pushing myself though. And it's nice that way because it is a bike that does accommodate you if you really want to, you know, get exercise. You know, I'm cruising along around the 30 kilometer an hour quite often here. But if I wanted to, I could kind of just ease off and enjoy a comfortable, kind of leisurely ride, and you can do that as well. So it'll really accommodate whatever you want to do with it. So I'm going to head now onto the Stockton Creek Trail, hard packed gravel, check out the tires, the brakes, traction, stability, that sort of thing. But it's great because you know, there's no shoulder on Schmanis Road here, so when you can get off the road and onto trails, it's safer certainly, and more enjoyable as well. Hello, thanks. As you can see, still lots of debris, lots of streams and puddles on the trail. But again, that's not going to stop me. So there's some swerving here. These Supermoto X tires, I've actually ridden them a lot, and as you can see, no problem with traction at all. Good morning. Thanks. Looks like I need a louder bell. Okay, let me try braking here. There's some nice loose stuff here. Yep, no problem. Coming to a fairly quick stop. Let me see if I can lock up the brakes there. There we go. I was able to lock up the rear brake a little bit, but you really have to intend on doing that. There's enough modulation in these brakes, and of course you generally don't want to lock up your brakes. It gives you more control. You can avoid that. So it's really nice that these Magura brakes are very responsive. Lots of stopping power and lots of modulation to keep you in control. And yeah, these tires are doing really well. Very stable. The wet conditions don't bother me at all with this bike. The Supermoto X do really well in wet, slippery conditions. Now the trail's actually closed up ahead here. They're doing some work on it. They're going to put a bridge in and extend the trail all the way to Chemainus, which is going to be fantastic. It'll be a great way to commute between Ladysmith and Chemainus. This was your commute every day. You arrive at work and home a lot happier, that's for sure. So we have to go on a bit of a trail here that's muddy and rocky and rooty. You can see a lot more trees down here. And this is a good illustration of why you want a bike that can handle that. You wouldn't want to, you know, this has been closed for a few months now. You wouldn't want to not be able to ride because, you know, your bike can't handle the detour that you want to take. You don't want to just have to turn around and go home or not ride at all. You want to have a bike that, you know, when something happens unexpected, whether it be having to go on a trail detour or whether it be, you know, somebody cutting out in front of you on the road and needing to hit the shoulder, it's nice having a bike that's going to handle all that. Here's a great example of that Intuvia system. I don't know if you could see on the video there, but as I climbed the hill, it got steeper towards the end, and I could just dial in my cadence to help me make it really easy to get up that hill. So this is a little bit of looser gravel, and again with these super wide tires, no problem with traction. Now I'm into some mud, roots, rocks, a bit of a mountain bike trail in a way. And that's the great thing about the Homage, is you could actually go mountain biking out with it. You do have the air fork, the air shock as well, which you can adjust based on your weight and preferences. I'm hearing a little bit of rattling over some of these roots in the front end there. I'll have to check and see if maybe a fender needs tightened up, or if it's this plate. I don't think it's this plate for the battery. I think it's probably the fender. It's an easy adjustment to make. So I'm a little bit more conscious on this trail of the wet mud. It rained quite a bit last night, so the mud is wet. So far no slippage, but that is one of the things about the Supermoto X tire, is it's not as effective in mud as it is in everything else, and that's because it doesn't have knobs on it. So it's possible that if you're riding really aggressively in mud, you might get a little bit of slippage. That's where I'd go with the Homage GX Rohloff. Comes with the Rock Razor tires, which do have the knobs that you want for the mud. Or, you know, of course, you could put those tires on this bike. If you really like the Intuvia, you want to put knobbier tires on for the mud or for winter mountain biking, you can do that. But so far, no problems in this varied terrain here. You can see it's quite wet, lots of mud. The other thing, you know, that I do really like the Rohloff, the electronic shifting, really easy to control. And it does give you a wider gear ratio. So I'm going to head back up this hill in a few moments. This is a great hill to demonstrate, you know, the controlled braking that's available. It's a little bit loose. There's a corner at the bottom. With the Inviolo, I'll be able to get up that hill no problem with that 380% gear ratio. But with the Rohloff, it would be even easier because the Rohloff has a wider gear ratio. So I can keep rolling with less effort than with the Inviolo. And by that I mean I'm still, it's not that the motor or the Rohloff is giving you more power. It just means you can spin at a higher rate when it gets really steep, and that spinning is what's going to keep you moving. Whereas you'll eventually find on a really, really steep hill, turbo for the steep hill here, a really steep hill, eventually what happens is you can't pedal fast enough to make it up the steep slope. With any bike. Now that'd be a really, really steep hill with this bike, but that's where, you know, right now I'm in my easiest gear and my cadence is fairly slow. I should have switched to my cadence screen here. There we go, 62 RPM, and I'm pushing, but I made it, and it's great. It's a really steep hill. If you're riding a lot of that or a lot of trails like this, then going with the Rohloff is definitely a good idea, because you're going to be able to spin at a much higher cadence, which is then going to require less pushing, less hard pushing, just faster spinning to make it up that hill. And I did notice that when I've ridden that same hill on a bike with the Rohloff E-Shift. It's definitely less pushing, which is nice. But you know, that's a really steep hill, and maybe you're not coming mountain biking every weekend on a trail like this. And the Homage Vario is great because that CVT is really nice, especially on a hill with a variable grade. This is actually a lot of fun. I really enjoy riding this trail. You know, it's beautiful, and this bike is handling it superbly. It's a really fascinating bike to me because this is something, you know, that I would bring my mountain bike on. Well, one of the fun things I like to do, bring my mountain bike on at night. There's no pedestrians on it, and gets your adrenaline running. But this bike, you know, it's more upright than my mountain bike, so it's a little bit more comfort oriented, and I'm really enjoying that. Actually, it's like this really neat mix of having a lot of control, being able to go mountain biking, but also being, you know, really relaxed and very comfortable. Okay, well, put her up into turbo for the next big hill. And again, this Inviolo hub is great because if I want to pedal down the hill when I get around the corner here, I can, and then I can still, morning, shift to the right gear when I get to the hill and adjust that as I climb. So I have a D-Lite GX Rohloff myself, and I kind of debated, and I don't know which way to go still. I debated actually between the Homage GX Rohloff and the D-Lite GX Rohloff. In the past you couldn't get the Homage with the dual batteries, so for me the D-Lite in the past was the obvious choice. But now, you know, you can get the Homage with the Rohloff, with the E-Shift, you know, with the full suspension, the dual batteries, and it's you know, such a comfortable, enjoyable ride. I really like the riding position. I think kind of what helped me decide in favor of the D-Lite was the water bottles. So the D-Lite GX Rohloff, if you check out that video review, has integrated water bottle holders, whereas with the Homage you'd have to put something on the handlebars here. We do have some really nice bags actually that work very well there. That's what my wife uses on hers. But you know, I still do really like the Homage, especially, you know, for myself I'd go with the D-Lite, the Homage with a Rohloff. Either way, I love having the Gates belt, so my wife was excited about the 2019 Homage because of the dual battery. She really likes that feature, and I was excited for her for that, but I was excited for me to have the belt instead of the chain because, of course, In the past I was doing the maintenance on the chain and you know, needing to remember to, because I rode her bike a lot. I really like the Homage, and so I would have to you know, clean and oil it and keep it from rusting. So I'm super thrilled to have a belt because we can go for a ride in the rain or wet conditions like this, and I don't have to worry about doing anything when I get home. I don't have to worry about the drivetrain at all. Here's a nice steep hill we can test out the brakes on. In about almost 50, there we go, and start braking. And no problem. There's a bit of fluttering in that front brake pad there. It's because it's new, it hasn't bedded in yet. Eventually that'll quiet down. But yeah, no problem with the brakes. It is a heavier bike, especially with the 2 batteries on there. The NVLO hub, of course, adds a little bit of weight compared to a cassette. So it's nice knowing that you're not going to have any problems stopping. Bell comes with the bike, which is handy for things like this. That Supernova M99 light, it's handy to have the automatic brightening feature getting through a tunnel. Of course, you've got the high beam as well. And all of those things combine really to make this bike, to help you feel more confident on the bike. You're going to be safer, the brake lights are going to make you safer. That rear light is visible from a really long distance. And again, it just gives people the heads up that you're there. Front light also visible from a really long distance. I forgot to point out on the bike a few of the descents here. I've been able to pedal well past 50 kilometers an hour and still provide input to the bike. So it is, the gear ratio is leaning towards being able to go fast if you wish, but it also, as you saw on some of the steep hills, gives me enough climbing power to make it up the steeper hills. I'm going to get back onto some gravel road here with a lot of potholes. And again, even if you're not planning on trail riding, and a lot of people say, oh, I don't need full suspension, I'm not going mountain biking. But really, that's not what it's about. I mean, certainly it allows you to do that. But, you know, I've got a car behind me right now, and if I were on a different bike, I'd probably be slowing down quite a bit because this is loose gravel, and I'd be trying to avoid all these potholes. But, you know, I don't want to cut out in front of the car that's behind me to avoid them, so I can just ride right through them. It's not a problem. The car is avoiding them. So I'll do a little bit of swerving again here. You know, if you did want to avoid all the potholes, not a problem. These tires are doing a great job maintaining traction, and they're assisted by the control technology that keeps both my wheels on the ground, which means that I can do emergency maneuvers or quick maneuvers like that to avoid the pothole and really not have any problems. So this is a super comfortable bike. I've really enjoyed riding it. I'm disappointed that I'm coming to the end of the ride test. I think you know, it's not something I mentioned very often in the videos, but the bit of the ride test that I put online is only a small portion of what I actually do. I do actually often do a few more rides just to make sure I haven't missed anything and really make sure I understand what the bike is all about. And so I'm looking forward to that. It is a fantastic bike. If you want to come try it yourself, you can schedule an appointment on our website at citruscycles.ca. If you have questions, you want to see the current pricing, order online with free shipping in Canada, or come pick it up in our store here in beautiful Ladysmith on Vancouver Island. You can find all the details on that on our website at citruscycles.ca. Yeah, great bike for everything really. Commuting, pavement, mountain biking, trails, long rides, short rides, everything. Definitely would be the top of my list. Okay, it's a dark and rainy night, which seems like a great time to do some more ride tests. I've got the Homage GX Rohloff now, so we've got the knobbier rock racer tires, that's what they are, and the Rohloff with the 520% gear ratio and the electronic shifting. It's also a great opportunity to show you this light, so I'll put it on low beam right now. And then for the trail, high beam, see that 1250 lumens, more than bright enough for me to ride the trail at a higher speed and not be overshooting my light. So it's wet, it's going to be slippery. I'm going to get into some more mud soon, and the rock racer tires are really going to be great for that. Even now, you know, in this bit of gravel, wet leaves, they're performing really well. Do a brake test here. Yeah, they do really great that way. They come to a complete stop. I don't know if you heard it there or not, but bike with the Rohloff automatically downshifted to fifth gear, which is great, makes it easy to get started. And the E-shift is fantastic. You just press the button and it shifts for you. But as you can see, hopefully the camera's working. It's really dark, but I can see no problem. I'll cut the camera for a few minutes and come back when I'm on the muddy trail. Okay, here on some loose gravel. Nice steep hill here. This is fun with the Rohloff because I can put it into 14, pedal hard down the hill if I want to gain speed for the other side, and as I climb, very easily use the E-shift to adjust to the right gear for the climb. So it is fun, even if I'm not pedaling down the hill, while I'm coasting, to be able to change gears to get ready for the climb. Which of course isn't something you can do on a regular bike. With a Rohloff, you can shift while you're coasting and while you're stopped. Now I'm getting to some mud and some rocks and roots and branches on the trail. Must have been some more wind. And you can see the light's doing a really good job of illuminating where I need to go. It moves as I steer, of course. And I really like these rock racer tires for this mud. Now it's been raining since I was on the trail this morning, and so it's even wetter, and you know, I can really feel these tires grabbing in the wet corners like that. The suspension of course helps with traction as well, so I can do some crazy things like ride a muddy, rocky, rooty, wet trail like this at night in the dark in the rain and be confident that I'm going to stay on my bike. And you may think that I'm crazy and you may not do this kind of riding. That's okay, but you may find yourself occasionally in an emergency situation where you need to get out of the way of a car or something like that, and it's nice knowing that your bike can handle anything that you're going to throw at it. Or maybe you'll turn into a crazy person like me. We often find with our customers that what they end up doing with their bikes far exceeded any expectations, because it just becomes so doable. You never would have imagined doing something like this before. When you get a bike that can handle it, it really opens up a lot of opportunities for you. Alright, I'm going to head down this really steep hill here. I'm hoping the GPS will work to show the gradient. It is really, really steep, especially right at the very end here. But with the tree cover, sometimes it doesn't work. I'm thinking we're exceeding a 30% grade from previous videos I've done, but it is really, really steep. And this is where the Rohloff is really going to come in handy. Climbing a really steep hill like that is much easier when you can go into a really, really low gear. Now I should, probably give you a safety disclaimer and not suggest that you do what I'm doing and ride
on trails at night. I'm fairly familiar with the trail. I'm very confident in this light, and I know that there weren't any trees down, which of course could be a problem, and we've got great brakes to help me stop should that be the case. Loving the full suspension as I ride over these rocks and roots. It could be something that would be really bone jarring, and with this full suspension it really smooths it out and also keeps you in control, so I didn't have to really slow down or be really careful about picking my line. Okay, so I'm in 5, bring it down all the way to 1. Here we go. And let me change my cadence here. There we go. Look at that, I'm doing 80, almost 90, and way easier on a really, really steep hill like that than the Vario, because spinning at 80 RPM is much easier than spinning at 60. You don't have to push as hard. So it's probably the same amount of effort, it just feels easier because you're not pushing as hard. You can spin faster and just crawl right up there. As long as you can keep a speed that's going to keep you upright, then you don't have to go fast, and as long as you can keep spinning, you don't have to pedal hard, and you can really climb up anything. If you're not routinely climbing up 30% grades, the Vario is fine, and even if you are, as long as you don't mind, I made it up just fine on the Vario, but it definitely was a little bit more work. So for my wife, I'm really excited for her to have the Rohloff. She's not a huge fan of climbing really steep hills. Kind of freaks her out sometimes, going down them too. So this will be a great bike for her because she's going to be able to just spin up any of those hills. But the Vario would work as well, and of course you can also get the touring with the chain, the cassette, and the derailleur. This is an awesome bike. I'm really enjoying it. Again, it's just this really neat mix of super comfortable, very upright, really accessible, right? Like I didn't have to, well, I had to put all my rain clothes on because it's raining, but with that step through, and I can just get on and ride. But at the same time, I can do some, more technical things. It is full suspension. That Bosch CX gives you lots of power. That Rohloff gives you the gear ratio you need. This light makes night riding so much fun. There's so much to love about it. I'm really enjoying the Kiox display. Even little things like when you turn the bike on, it remembers the last level that you're in. It's not something that happens on the Intuvia. That's something new with the Kiox. It's really cool. So if you have questions, you want to come try it out, you know how to reach us. All the info is on our website at citruscycles.ca.